Hello and welcome along to the RTÉ Rugby podcast, our third last pod of the season. The weeks are flying by and it's all big business between now and June with semi-finals and finals in the URC and Heineken Champions Cup to break down. We'll be recapping last weekend's URC finals, looking ahead to the Champions Cup final this Saturday. That's Leinster against La Rochelle at the Aviva Stadium. 4 o'clock, the coverage gets underway on RTÉ2 and RTÉ Player. Bernard Jackman is on the pod this week. He'll be part of RT2's coverage, and James Downey will be there for RT Radio 1 as well with commentary alongside Michael Corcoran on Saturday. Lads, how are we doing?
Great, thank you.
Good, thanks, yeah. Can't wait for this game.
Yeah, we'll start though back at the Aviva Stadium last week where both E were as well, and Jack Crowley's drop goal sending Munster into the BKT United Rugby Championship final. 16-15 winners against Leinster. They'll play the Stormers next week in the final. Birch, just to talk about one moment in a game, just changing a narrative entirely. After 74 or 75 minutes, it looked like Munster were out of gas. They were pinned back into their 22, a point down. We were all going to be talking about another missed opportunity, Munster's wastefulness in the 22, about how they'd missed out on this great chance to catch Leinster on the hop. And in fairness to them, they run it out of their 22. They run it out from deep. They get themselves into a position, and Jack Crowley puts it between the posts. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, and to do that with the fatigue that they would have been under, and from the gantry, it was very obvious. Their body language looked like they were out on their feet, and obviously Leinster had a strong fourth quarter, and you just felt exactly as you said that Munster would have rued all the opportunities they had in Leinster's 22 and didn't convert. Now, some very good defence from Leinster, but Prendergast was interviewed before halftime and he said that was the big message that was going to be drilled into the players at halftime, that they need to convert those chances. And just after halftime, they got back in again and went away empty-handed. And then we had that big turnover on Salanoa when they were only a couple of yards out. And you just felt, despite Munster having played really well, it was going to be one of those games where they fell short, but could have taken a lot of confidence from it. But the manner in which they worked their way up the field, in fairness, they needed to play fast when Clarkson knocked it on because their scrum was under pressure. So a reset with a scrum probably wasn't going to be of great advantage to them. And they took the risk, and it took a little half break from Rory Scannell and a brilliant kick on the run from Craig Casey, which found grass, and then they pressurised Nick McCarthy and then they got into their counter-attack shape, and obviously the drop goal was really sweet. Very close to getting blocked down by Baird, but Crowley nailed it. And they'll go to Cape Town now on a real high, and obviously should have some players back. But it's a great performance by Munster. They showed, I suppose, how they saw an opportunity to beat Leinster, and that was by keeping possession. Keeping possession made Leinster make over 250 tackles. And took a lot of risks as well, ball in hand, and got into those 15-meter channels. Sometimes it looked like it was wasteful to actually throw those long passes to somebody who was going to get tackled, but it allowed them refine a little bit of shape and find some soft corners elsewhere. So very, very impressive. And obviously Leamy, to hold Leinster to 15 points, how rare is that, especially at home? So yeah, it was a good day all around for Munster.
Yeah, and James, it was funny, like obviously on the wastefulness was a bit of an issue and will be something they'll have to address in the final. But at the time when I was watching that game, I was thinking, oh my God, look at all the chances they're letting slip by here. And it was only on Sunday when I actually kind of watched it back again and took it all in that you're kind of going, okay, on one hand, even if they were to have gone on and lost, it would have been an absolutely brutal feeling. But I remember looking back at the 2021 Pro 14 final against Leinster at the RDS. Leinster won 16-6. It was a 10-point win for them, and in reality, they probably could have won by 30 or 40 points because Munster under Johan van Graan that day just did not fire a shot. Sometimes it's a little bit better to, if you're going to go out swinging for the fences. And in fairness, it was that sense of adventure that was getting them the opportunities in the 22 earlier in the game. That was ultimately the same sense of adventure that got them out of their own 22 and got them back into a position. So in the end, the intent won, but just about.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you look at the start of the season and how Munster played against Glasgow and all the errors and the mistakes and trying to play so simply with the new game plan, I suppose, that Prendergast has brought in and tried to instill with Rowntree and Leamy. I think if you contrast it to the end of the season, they really have pushed it on, because there was a lot of naysayers at the start of the year who were saying they're going to struggle, they're not getting a game plan. From where they are now to got themselves into a final, it's got to be credit, one, to the players, but also to the staff. I think they've put a lot of hard work in behind, and it just goes to show Graham Rountree's spoken a lot about player power and making them make the decisions on the run out there, and he wants to play, and he doesn't want to have these tight games and not fire a shot and not ask these questions. I think he's one of these coaches that says, go out there and have a go and not be left wondering. And that's the last thing you want to do, is be sat in the dressing room going, oh, if only we'd done this. Whilst if you throw everything at it, not much you can do. If you're beaten by a better side, you're beaten by a better side. But I just think that Munster, just controlled the game when they had to control it. Needed a bit of luck as well. I think they got that luck. I thought, like, even with, like, Birch mentioned it there, I think Brian Baird is very close to blocking down Jack Crowley as well. And Leinster, as much of a gamble as Leinster took in selecting that side, still were close to winning that game as well, but you do have to give so much credit to Munster and how their game plan has evolved, how the players have bought into it, and you'd like to hope that they can certainly go on and kick on next week, because if you look at they beat the Stormers hadn't lost at home. They beat Glasgow hadn't lost at home, and they beat Leinster, and Leinster hadn't lost at home. So they're certainly riding the crest of wave at the moment. And who'd bet against Munster in a European final or in a final next week?
Yeah, nobody believes in us is one of the great sporting kind of mottos. But to go on to back to just the game itself, Birch, in the third quarter, it was just one of the best 20-25 minute spells I think we're going to see in a game this year, where you had Munster, every time they were getting the ball, they were just running it straight back down at Leinster. They were finding loads of holes outside of the 22 and finding loads of opportunities to get themselves into position close to the line. And then Leinster would come up with some absolutely brilliant defence and just soak up every tackle, and until the point where they were forcing a mistake, and Munster would come right back down at them again. And then ultimately, after 2 or 3 goes at that, Leinster get the ball, they go up and score a try themselves. It was just absolutely pulsating for those 20-25 minutes. And you said it as well earlier on, where at that point, once Leinster got into the lead, it actually looked like Munster were absolutely just wasted with energy. Like they looked like they had absolutely nothing left, but just about found some. As the second half in particular, it was a really good 80 minutes, but I just thought the second half, and in particular that 20-25 minute spell after halftime, was just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you kind of felt it was I certainly felt it was a real sign of their spirit and their mental toughness, because Leinster had got that score just before halftime, to go in at halftime in the lead, and it would have been easy for Munster to feel, particularly with all the injuries they had going into this game, the fact that they've been on the road, the fact that it's Leinster, that it just wasn't going to be their day when they hadn't converted some of those opportunities, and they kept pushing on, and didn't let the disappointment of obviously not scoring and turning down points again and again affect them. And I thought the bench made a big impact. And when you think that, Kendellen and Jack O'Donoghue in particular, Rory Scannell, I thought were excellent. When you think of the players they were missing from the previous week with the HIAs, it was very, very impressive what they've done. And early on in the year, if you remember, Rowntree was talking about we have to change how we train. We're not fit enough. It's not that we're not fit enough, but we're not equipped to play this high tempo game that we want to play, and that's the way we're going to go, because we know we can't maybe mix it with the biggest teams the way we used to in the past with playing 10-man rugby. So there was 3 elements to that. One was to increase, I suppose, the players' belief that it could work, and they've obviously done that. 2 is the fitness levels, and then 3 is the skill set. And while some balls went to ground, and their skill set definitely has more improvement to make, I thought that a lot of the handling they put in place did ask questions at Leinster and allowed them keep possession for far longer than teams normally do. So I think they've made a lot of progress. I still think they may win the URC, and I hope they do, but I still think they're a couple of front rows away from being genuine contenders against the likes of Leinster and La Rochelle in Europe. But where they were 12 months ago, they're a different team totally.
But James, if you look at the changes that have happened over the course of the last 12 months to everything pretty much on the pitch there, like it's not as if Rowntree has come in and just kind of tweaked a couple of little things that were going on in the last administration. Like Birch mentioned, the way they trained has been a big change over the last year, like bringing a real pace into it and getting those skills working under physical and mental pressure. You look at they seem to be imposing their own game on the opposition a lot more rather than trying to figure out a plan to stop the opposition. Like it looks like they kind of have an identity to the way they play. The personnel has changed a lot as well. You look at Shane Daly and Calvin Nash keeping Simon Zebo out of the team. Like 12 months ago, it would have seemed inconceivable that Simon Zebo couldn't get anywhere near a Munster team if he was fully fit. Joey Carberry's been dropped as well. Like Rowntree hasn't been afraid to make big changes to the team and make big calls, which has probably been an important thing as well for him stepping up as a first-time head coach.
Yeah, hugely. And I think there are some big, brave calls. I think as well, you mentioned there the game plan. I think that's crucial. I think players' understanding of the game plan and what Rowntree and Prendergast are trying to achieve out there and defensively with Leamy. I think it's a case of everyone buying in on that and improving that skill set. Skill set under fatigue is very hard to do. It's hard to replicate. So you got to try and bring it in, as Birch has mentioned again, in the training sessions, using the high tempo, and even in the warm ups. I was watching. I know. Okay, look, Leamy's come back from Leinster. He's gotten an awful lot of information from there. He's shown that Leinster play at this high tempo, put some small bits into the way Munster do it, and it's helped kind of kick on Munster and evolve them even more. So I know people might like to hear that taking a few things from Leinster, but you've got to use they're the flag bearers for the competition and in Europe, so they've got to use whatever they can to kick on. I think he's mentioned some players as well. Like I think Calvin Nash has been absolutely superb this year, and like he was unlucky with been knocked out or missing this game. So look, players are coming on. He's making the right calls, and yeah, hopefully Munster can get that win next week.
And Shane Daly was someone the lads on Against the Head Birch were talking about on Monday night, and it's the use of the wingers really that's been really, really interesting. And I know from press conferences and stuff this season, we've spoken to Daly and to Nash, and one thing they've said is, like with the way they're playing this year, that they're doing a lot more than chasing kicks and trying to just retain possession. They're given a bit of license to come in off their wings, get involved in play, chase action a little bit. And it's exactly what like Andy Farrell always talks about. I can never remember, is it that he doesn't like tidy wingers or he likes messy wingers, but that's what they're doing at the moment, and it's been a really, really interesting element of their play.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and they look different players. I mean, than they did under Johan. Mike Haley as well has got a much clearer role in terms of how to counterattack, how to play on off turnover ball, and in fairness to Prendergast, I mean, I thought the stuff about copying Leinster was a bit much, because actually Munster's attack isn't exact same as Leinster at all. It's actually more of a French-based attack, and Prendergast. It is what Daly and Nash are doing now is basically what Leinster are doing. Sorry, what Ireland are doing in terms of wings and Leinster, but also Prendergast was doing this for 3 or 4 years with Racing, and Stade Francais beforehand, and it's just the way the game has evolved, and it has shown Daly and Nash shown that they're better players than they looked a year ago, and that's what coaches need to do. They need to improve their players, and Prendergast as a backline, I think he still would feel it's not a finished article. There's still more there, and obviously they've had a lot of different changes at 10 this year, and 9 to be fair as well. There's been a lot of chopping and changing there, so they haven't probably got a settled run at it. But when they do, I think they're going to be a threat to any team that's in both competitions.
Final point then, James, on Munster before we move the conversation on towards Leinster. Scenes were brilliant at full time on Saturday evening, but it was important to see likes of Graham Rowntree, Peter Mahoney, Keith Earls after the game as well, stressing the trophy is the goal here. You know, this was just one victory. It doesn't really count for too much unless they can go down to Cape Town and win, which is obviously a massive, massive challenge. and they will be underdogs going down there, but it's about winning a trophy for the first time in 12 years.
Yeah, look, and I understand the professionals that they are, and they're going to come out and try and control the narrative and say, look, it's a final we want to win. We've won nothing here today. But also on the flip side, I do think that you do have to enjoy these wins. It's not as if Keith Earls has a huge long list of victories up in the Aviva and beating Leinster, nor do many of them. I think you could see after the game, you were talking about celebrations, that they had their families coming out. They did enjoy it, and I think it's rightly so that they enjoy these wins when they're few and far between. So, and they do have a 2-week break. They can recover. They could have enjoyed each other's company. You could see the squad were coming onto the pitch as well and celebrating, enjoying it all. So that's all encompassing in terms of what Rowntree is trying to achieve down there. So look, you expect the sound bites from the main players there, but I think that if you look into next week, there's going to be this week as well, big focus on it. You know, it's Munster's first chance in the trophy in a long time, so they'll be extremely driven. And as I mentioned there, they've beaten the last couple of games. They've beaten sides that have unbeaten records at home. They've beaten the Stormers already down there, and so they had a pretty successful trip down there in the last couple of weeks. So it's not going to daunt them at the moment, you know. And I think they'll go in there. They'll probably be underdogs, and no better team to go down and upset the odds.
Yeah, and the bonus as well for them next season is by getting to the final, they'll be in the top pot for the Champions Cup as well next season. So the implications going on further into next season. On Leinster though, and we may as well move it on to them because they have another big game coming up this weekend, Birch. Considering the team's going to be largely changed for this weekend, how much of a momentum killer is the defeat at the weekend? How easily do you think they can park it and move on?
I think they can park and move it on pretty easily because there's so many different players who didn't play in it. I think it focuses the mind in terms of how cruel and ruthless knockout rugby is. You know, so the majority of the players who play this weekend were involved in Marseille, where the game was taken from them. You know, they were leading going into the last couple of minutes, and obviously that try from RTÉ, you know, took the silverware away from them, and likewise whether out on the field, like Van der Fleer, or Conan at the weekend, or Henshaw, but the rest of the lads sitting in the ground could see how if you don't put a game to bed, the best teams will come back and take it away. So they'll refocus the mind. I think I don't think it'll affect them massively, but I think it does heighten the pressure on them as a squad to win this weekend, because there's nothing to look forward to the week after. There's no second bite of getting silverware and sending players away, you know, on a high, or finishing the season with the silverware that Leinster have to judge themselves on because of the resources they have. So I think there is a huge amount of pressure this week, and they have enough experience to handle that, but it does add to the stress and the challenge.
Yeah, the pressure is the big one, James. It just adds this another layer to it. Like this time 12 months ago, you probably would have been backing Leinster to win a double last season, and now they are 80 minutes away from potentially going 2 trophyless seasons back to back.
Yeah, it's huge pressure, really. I agree with what Birch has said there, that they'll be able to kind of flip around and refocus again this week. But yeah, it's like within 4 days we'll know whether it's been a pretty unsuccessful season, and again, and talking about that knockout rugby, it is cruel. That's part of it. At the start of the year.
To interrupt as well, is obviously like the flip side is win this weekend. Last week's 80 minutes is entirely forgotten, to be totally honest.
Yeah, no, completely. And I look, and Europe is, I'm sure if you ask every Leinster player what would they prefer to win if they had a choice, they would all choose Europe. So I think that this is the big focus. I do think that the pressure is there, yes, but this side are well used to it. I think you look at what La Rochelle have done last week as well, and kind of resting some of their players. They've had the similar mindset maybe of being able to rest, and now it's the focus is on this, and they know both teams played obviously last year in the final, and they'll know what to expect. So pressure will be there, but certainly going to be built up to be an unbelievable final.
Yeah, and Birch, the the psychology of the rematch is brilliant because there's so much you can pick out from last year's game of things La Rochelle did right, things Leinster might have done wrong, little moments that might have swung things. But certainly in last season's final, La Rochelle and Ronan O'Gara admitted as much afterwards. They seemed happy to let Leinster take those shots at goal all day long, play their 3-6-9 rugby. While La Rochelle knew that to beat Leinster, you're going to have to score tries, and that's what they were banking on. Would you expect Leinster to go for the jugular a little bit more this year, try be a little bit more aggressive, or is it still like, are you still talking like it's cup rugby, cup final rugby? It's take your points when they're available.
Yeah, I think they have put a huge focus on being able to convert those maul opportunities this year. I think their maul is better.
And why you put anything?
Yeah,
why it is better?
Their body height, their ability to have a shift drive quite quickly and win that kind of forward momentum, and then not give the opposition a chance to recover. So they spent a huge amount of time on it. They actually signed Jason Jenkins to give them that extra power in that area, but obviously Ross Maloney's form has meant up till now that Jenkins has had to wait for the bench, or had to come off the bench. Now, whether we haven't seen the team for this weekend, but it was for teams like Toulouse, La Rochelle, Bulls, etc., that Jason Jenkins was brought in to give them that extra bit of physicality. And look, maybe it's his role is off the bench to give him that physicality and power late in the game. But the ultimate test would be La Rochelle, because it has worked well in the URC. It's worked well in other games in Europe, but this is a bigger pack than they come up against. And Donegal Ryan as well, as someone who has given this pack, who have massive power and size, a lot of detail as well. So they're more detailed, say, than Toulouse pack in terms of how they maul themselves, but how they defend mauls. And it's gonna be fascinating. I think Leinster have to go to the corner if they have kickable penalties early doors. And obviously if they can't convert them, then they need to flip and take points, but or obviously try and score an open play. But I think early doors, if Leinster turn down or take points, shots at goal, I think that would give La Rochelle a little bit of belief, from, unless it's very kickable.
So you're saying you'd want to see them to go?
Yeah, I'd rather see them go to the corner early doors and test that. Yeah, that rather than let them off the hook with 3-6-9.
Yeah,
because I think La Rochelle's attack, I think they will score.
To go back on Jason Jenkins, who you mentioned there, you're saying obviously like we're going to be finding out on Friday if he's going to be starting or if he's going to be on the bench. Do you think it's where Leinster need him is in that first 55 or 50 odd minutes, or is it in that last half hour? Because as you said, they signed him because they wanted the bulk and the power, but certainly in the second half of the season we've seen them bring him off the bench and close out the games and have that power in reserve. Like, do you think against a side like La Rochelle, Leinster would prefer to have that extra bit of power in the final 20-30 minutes, or do they want it for the first 50?
You don't want to show them any weakness in at scrum or maul time. And to be fair to Jenkins, I think he's improved his footballing has improved this year under Leinster under Leinster's coaching as well. Obviously, what he's been asked to do and in Munster was different under Johan, but also he was injured a lot. But I think he looks more mobile and a ball player. But Ross Maloney has been outstanding. Ross Maloney is Leinster's go-to line-out player, and they will feel that, I think, that line-out possession, a quality line-out possession in the areas that aren't mauling opportunities is nearly more important. Like, Leinster have an array of strike plays off lineouts, which gets them on the front foot, hurts teams. And Maloney and his ability to read lineouts, to call, and to win it himself is a big part of that. So I actually think they will go with Maloney to start and have Jenkins there as a bit of a safety blanket.
Jimmy, what way are you leaning?
Yeah, no, I would. Bert sounds like he knows something there, but yeah, no, I would agree though that Maloney's been outstanding this season, and last season as well. I thought he was superb. I think he's He's so astute around that line out, but also him going up against your kind of with Donnacha Ryan, who would have that detail in the line out area as well. He would thrive on this type of competition, and also it being Leinster too, you know, having that extra incentive for him. But I do think that, in terms of if you're looking at how the game will go, I do think that Leinster do need to go out and attack. Leinster need to score. I don't think it's going to be enough against the French side where you do go 3-6, even though it is a cup game. I still think that Leinster do need to score, and they are pretty efficient once they get into that 22, into that 5 meter channel. So he'd want them to back that confidence that they've had over the past while and send it into the corner and have a go.
And if they aren't getting those penalties or those opportunities to go into the corner, how do they go about breaking down La Rochelle? Is it a case of trying to keep those big heavy forwards moving around the pitch as much as possible and try as much as you can tire them out?
I do think so, because I think if it's a slow game, I think it's going to suit La Rochelle. If it's going to be scrums, it's going to be, scrums, line-outs, mauls, it's going to suit the heavy boys, the big pack. I know Leinster mightn't have as much bulk, and first mentioned there that Jenkins is brought in to bring that on, but I think that by Leinster moving the ball around, trying to change and fatigue those heavy front five forwards so they can't impact the game as much as they can carry as hard, like just move them around is going to be key. Footwork, which we've seen from like a Caelan Doris at the gain line, moving these big lads around is going to be crucial. Also speed of ball, the breakdown is going to be absolutely massive. Leinster can get that ball away quickly, not let the big guys, because if it's going to be a collision, La Rochelle are the bigger players, but I think it's a case of if Leinster can move that ball around and not let it just be someone running straight at, use that footwork to get in behind and try and stretch these La Rochelle players, that's going to be key to their success.
And if Birch if that's what they want to be doing, how confident are you that they will be able to do it?
Yeah, I am confident. I think that they've been waiting for this opportunity for 12 months. And they have evolved, when they've had that first team on the field, they've looked to be close to unbeatable. And I suppose probably the closer I get to the game, the more doubts I have. But probably if I look at what Leinster did and what a lot of these players did in an Irish jersey this year, and they have shown the ability to, I suppose, use that footwork against bigger teams, play a high tempo, stretch teams. They've got a great skill set. They've got good variety. So it is at home for Leinster. I think they are good enough. But just been looking back last weekend over at La Rochelle in the recent weeks, obviously not last weekend when they rest the players, but the weeks leading up to that. And I remember listening to Rog before the game against Saracens, the semi-final, and he said, "Oh, we're not where we need to be yet, but that the plan is to peak now this weekend, and obviously in 2 weeks, in a couple weekends in top 14." So they have tailored everything, and they took a gamble on not being at the absolute best for Saracens, but obviously managed to handle them pretty well and looked pretty good. So they are coming here. They are the champions. It's their third final in a row. For the Challenge Cup final in 2019. I mean, their consistency in European knockout rugby is off the scales, given where they've come from, our Pro D2 side in 2014. So,
and it's great to see. Sorry to interrupt. It's great to see another French team buying into Europe as much. Like, I know Toulouse are always there or thereabouts, but we do have a lot of French teams who come good for a couple of years and then just vanish again when it comes to European stuff. But it's great to see that, like, O'Gara has clearly has raised the importance of European rugby for La Rochelle than probably what it was before he arrived.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and he's got the players to believe in it. And also, sometimes you see with French teams when they have a bit of success in Europe, they go, top 14 is the priority, and obviously La Rochelle, a top 14 for La Rochelle would be incredible, but they haven't let go of this hunger to actually retain their trophy in Europe as well. It's phenomenal. It's such an interesting story project built around a great president, a fanatic fan base, obviously John O'Gibbs and Rog now taking on from John O'Gibbs, and just creating this team who are a joy to watch as well, and not just in so many different ways. Sometimes they play brilliant rugby. Sometimes it's that power game. Sometimes it's based around really smart tactical kicking game. Like they're probably the team who evolved their tactics the most on a game by game basis. You can just see Rog just really trying to find key to stopping an opposition, and then the players being able to implement that at a very high level. It's a great story, and if they could win it again back to back and win it in Dublin, I mean, it would just be something else for him. But obviously from a Leinster point of view, it's so important that they have that silverware now, because not to win European Cup since 2018, to have that many internationals, to have that budget, to have that academy, that's where they have to be judged.
Yeah, and James bursted it there, like to not win a European Cup since 2018. It does feel like a long time for how consistent Leinster have been over the course of that time. It would be their third final since then. Stuart Lancaster moving on, Johnny Sexton moving on. Like there are a lot of big motivations for Leinster coming into this weekend, not least being able to send someone like Johnny Sexton out with I know he's not going to be playing, but a great ending to a great career.
Yeah, look, we've heard Leinster talk about this elusive fifth star for quite some time now, as we said, 2018 and third final as well. So yeah, they've gotten close, but they just haven't delivered on the occasion. I think just the way that the Irish side have gone, the way Leinster have gone, I do agree again with Burch that coming up to this weekend, I was very confident that Leinster would win this weekend. But as you get closer to it, you kind of question and wonder and think what O'Gara is going to do and what he's going to have up his sleeve and how Leinster will turn up. But I do think that it has been quite a dry patch in terms of that European success that Leinster have needed over the past couple of years. And if they don't get this success this weekend, it's been a pretty poor season then when you look back with no silverware, because ultimately that's how you're judged, and Leinster do judge themselves on these European Cups, and that's where they want to see success regardless of there's no kind of emotion that Sexton's finishing and Lancaster's moving on. That's part of sport, and yeah, maybe they'll use a small bit of motivation, but look, I don't think that's gonna impact them any one bit. Like, I think it's a case that Leinster just need to really have this drilled focus. They don't have to worry about anything next week. It is purely on this, and that's where their mindset needs to be to get that elusive fifth star.
On the teams themselves, Birch, not really too many changes aside from the obvious, like Johnny Sexton's not going to be there from Leinster from 12 months ago. La Rochelle, there's a good few changes, like in key positions across that, like what we'd expect the match day 23 to be. I know there's still the spine of your Skelton, Antonio, Bergeris, Aldris, Dante, but without half Astoy there, Tawera Carbarlo obviously missed the final last year. Like there are a couple of changes that they've made, but they're
stronger though. Yeah, I think La Rochelle are stronger, Will. I think, Carbarlo being fit is massive. I mean, he's outstanding. There's lots of talk that he could be playing for Australia in the World Cup, or even France, who he qualifies for on residency, I think, just before the World Cup. And then Hastoy is an excellent recruit. I mean, the thing with Rog is he's actually brought in some really good GIF players. So he brought Dante down from Paris. He brought Dulin from Paris. He brought Hastoy from Pau. Sometimes we fall into the habit of just talking about Bottia or Raymond Rule or Will Skelton. But they've got a very, very strong French group of players as well, Bougerie, Aldry, etc. So I think La Rochelle are stronger than they were last year, which and Leinster are probably stronger as well, particularly in terms of depth. But I thought it was great for Leinster to have Kelleher and Henshaw back last weekend to start, because, well, I presume Robbie will start, but
Henshaw looked good as well. Henshaw looked good.
Henshaw was excellent. He was excellent. I mean, and then having Kelleher there, to finish the game, could be absolutely massive as well. So look, both teams are in in a really good place. And La Rochelle, I think there's only one injury this weekend. Nearly every single one of the players, bar one, is available, which is incredible work by the medical team in La Rochelle.
And James, the fun part then as well. Obviously you've got a nice little Munster hue to what's going on at La Rochelle as well. Like you've Raj Donegal. I know Ultan Delan is an ex-Connacht player, but he's a Kerry man, and Sean Dougal as well into the S&C and contact skills coach. There's like a little mini Munster revolution taking place down there as well, just to spice things up for a game against Leinster.
That's it. Just a small little bit of spice that the Munster lads
as if it needed any as well. As if it needed
exactly just for that extra week of 2 weeks in a row. Munster men can do a job in Leinster. So look, I'm sure that'll be in the back of their mind somewhere. But like Roger's not going to buy into any of that stuff. Like he's got them so well drilled. I think it's a case of implementing their game plan that he wants to do at the weekend, and it's certainly going to be a fascinating. It's a fascinating sideline. I'm sure we're going to see it all this week in the press about with Raj and Donegan and the likes in the background. But ultimately, for that 80 minutes, it's Raj is very astute. I think as well, he's going to be able to make these decisions on the hop, and if something's not working, he can change it and not wait till the last 10 minutes or something. And if he sees something's not right, he's one of these coaches who will take someone off and put on something to try and change that one, especially in a final. So you have to go for it. But yeah, certainly loads of subplots going around in it. So as I said, it's going to be a fascinating affair this weekend.
Yeah,
I thought he was brilliant, Neil. I thought he was brilliant yesterday at the press conference, because he got a sense that the French journalists in particular were hero worshipping Leinster a little bit, and they were asking questions around how is he going to stop Leinster? And he was like straight away batted away. He said, "Stop Leinster, La Rochelle. Who's going to stop us? How are they going to stop us?" Just flipping it and talking about the quality players he has. And whereas before he'll talk up the Leinster players, I think now he's talking up their quality and saying they're hungrier than ever. And it's not about conserving your title or retaining; it's about winning it again. And just really smart how he works the media. He's a master at it.
100%. Like I actually remember after the final last year being down in the press conference room afterwards, and it was O'Gara, it was who else was there? Aldridge at the top table, Sazi, I think, and someone else. And I mean, to see the way the players were even just looking at him as he spoke, he had the players and the media eating out of the palm of his hand, to be totally honest. And he just has this he has this hold of a room, which is really, really rare that I've seen from coaches over the last few years. Final thoughts, lads. Give me your final prediction. Birch first. I don't even need a scoreline. Who's lifting the trophy on Saturday evening?
I can't. I think La Rochelle are a quality side, but I think home advantage just get Leinster across.
James?
Yeah, that'd be the only thing I think that would do it if the Leinster supporters can get behind, because if you look at Marseille, there's pretty strong support from the La Rochelle following there that might have just driven them over the line. I think Leinster are going to have to use the home advantage.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how many La Rochelle fans will make it over with the price of hotels. They were great crack in Marseille last year, I have to say as well. Finally, before we finish up, we'll do a few minutes on Connacht. The season ended 25-43, beaten by the Stormers in Cape Town in the URC semi-final. To be honest, James, like the scoreline wasn't really reflective of the game. They got themselves back within a puncher's chance in the last few minutes, and the Stormers picked off a couple of late scores as well. Ultimately, they gave it a right shot, but the Stormers were just too good.
Yeah, there was always going to be a long shot for them to go over there and upset the odds. And I think if they kind of sit back and look again, start of a season where they were, there's a bit of change in the guard. Andy Friend's obviously moving on now as well. A lot of players have shifted on as well. That would they have taken that potentially? Yeah, okay, like a lot of errors in that game as well. I just think it was a bit of a frustrating game if you're a Connacht supporter looking at how they were playing. But look, I think if you're looking at next season, how they finish up this season, would you have taken the start of the season? I think so. I think going into
you'd
next
certainly have
season,
taken it after 3 or 4 defeats in 5 games.
Exactly. And that's where they've brought it on. That's where when the whole wouldn't say debacle, but when Andy Friend said he's moving on, and then Pete Wilkins has stepped in and he's overtaken now, and he's started to put his stamp on things towards the end of the year, and Andy Friend's taking a bit more of a back seat, and I think that the backroom staff are all sorted now for next year as well. So Connacht just have to use a positive from how they finish that season. Okay, bar the last game, but use that to kick on again next season and really push on. And ultimately, they've gotten into Europe again as well, which is crucial for them.
Yeah, and so Birch, is the important thing for Connacht now over the next few months to make sure that when the season starts up in October, like there's plenty of changes in the off season. There were plenty of changes in the off season 12 months ago as well, and ultimately it took them quite a while to work their way through the season and find something that worked and get into their groove. But the challenge this time round is they have to make a running start when the season picks up in October. They can't, every season can't be, okay, we've made lots of changes, we need to build our way through and try peak late on. They're a team that need to make a running start.
Yeah, they are, but I think they're probably in a good position to do so, because that Champions Cup qualification is a brilliant carrot, and they've got that to look forward to. They have spent time investing in some of those young players coming through the Connacht Academy who now look very capable. Dylan Tierney-Martin, the two Murray brothers,
Paul Ford.
Exactly, yeah. Really, Ford was outstanding, and he's a really nice, backup or replacement in the pathway for Bundy in time. Hawkshaw, I know he came from Leinster, but he was outstanding this year when he played. And they've got some further, this year's under-20s had 4 or 5 very good Connacht players involved as well. So then from a coaching point of view, obviously Muldoon is coming back. He knows Connacht inside out. Obviously, he has the experience from working in Bristol. Fardy understands the URC, European Rugby, very well from his time in Leinster.
He's a winner as well.
A winner, has been coaching in Japan. Wilkins is still going to be very hands-on. And then Mark Sexton, has been working with the Connacht Academy, so we'll know exactly, how Connacht want to play, and will add his own little layer to it. Plus, they have 4 months. They've had a long preseason. So I actually think, Connacht actually shouldn't start slowly because of all the changes. I think they're actually changes that can gel quickly, understand what's needed, and then they have the time because of that preseason. And they're only going to lose a few players on World Cup duty as well, so they will have that squad intact for most of those 4 months, which is incredible. All
right, so fingers crossed for Connacht over the long preseason. That's where we'll leave it for this week's pod. A reminder, La Rochelle and Leinster Heineken Champions Cup final live on RT2 and RT Player this Saturday evening. 4 o'clock is when coverage gets underway on RT2. Live commentary as well on RTÉ Radio 1 with James Downey here and Michael Corcoran as well. That's it from the RTÉ Rugby podcast from this week. We will be back next Wednesday recapping the Champions Cup final and looking ahead to the URC decider between Munster and Stormers. We'll speak to you then.